The morning sun blazed down on the Philippine Sea. Heat shimmers danced across the water's surface. Deep beneath those waves, steel groaned under tremendous pressure. June 19, 1944 struck the calendar like a death sentence. Time crawled forward with mechanical precision. 11:22 hours appeared in neat handwriting across the logbook. The pencil trembled between sweaty fingers. Lieutenant Junior Grade Jack Keefers fought to keep his writing steady. His hand shook despite years of training. The submarine USS Kavala pitched slightly in the current. Metal creaked around him. The conning tower felt smaller with each passing second. Every breath seemed louder than normal. His pulse hammered against his throat. The bearing numbers looked crooked on the page. Each digit represented life or death calculations. No room for error existed at this depth. No second chances waited in submarine warfare. The consequences of mistakes were always fatal. 140 miles stretched between their position and Yap Island. That distance meant nothing now. Ocean distances became meaningless when death approached. The vastness above them offered no comfort. Only crushing water pressure surrounded their steel hull. Lieutenant Commander Herman J. Kostler pressed his eye against the periscope lens. The rubber eyepiece felt warm against his skin. Salt spray had dried on the outer lens. Through that narrow window, destiny approached at high speed. 6 torpedoes cut through the dark water ahead. Each one carried 668 pounds of explosive death. Their wakes traced straight white lines toward the target. No deviation appeared in their paths. All hot, straight, and normal meant perfect shots. The massive Japanese aircraft carrier Shokaku filled his periscope view. Her hull stretched longer than 3 football fields. Steel plates covered her sides like armor. Her flight deck rose high above the waterline. Aircraft crowded every available space on deck. This ship had participated in the Pearl Harbor attack. Her aircraft had killed American sailors 30 months earlier. Now revenge sailed toward her at 46 knots. Justice moved through the water in torpedo form. 25,675 tons of enemy warship steamed directly ahead. That massive bulk represented years of Japanese shipbuilding. Thousands of workers had built her in Kure Naval Arsenal. Her construction had consumed precious steel and resources. Soon she would become nothing but wreckage on the ocean floor. Kostler understood the magnitude of this moment. Success would write Kavala's name in naval history forever. Failure would doom his crew to crushing depth-charge attacks. The carrier's escort destroyers would show no mercy to submarine raiders. Those seconds stretched like hours in his mind. Time moved differently during combat approaches. Each heartbeat counted toward final resolution. Either triumph or disaster waited just ahead. No middle ground existed in submarine warfare. What remained hidden from Kostler's knowledge was far more significant. This single attack would trigger massive consequences. The destruction ahead would contribute to complete Japanese naval aviation collapse. The Pacific War's outcome hung on these precise torpedo calculations. The Mariana Turkey Shoot was about to reach its bloody climax. American fighters circled overhead like hungry sharks. Japanese aircraft flew into carefully prepared death traps. Radar guided American interceptors toward their victims with deadly accuracy. Grand strategy sessions had not determined this war's outcome. Victory emerged from mechanical precision instead. Torpedo spread calculations mattered more than diplomatic conferences. Approach angles decided battles more than political negotiations. Split-second decisions by individual sailors shaped history more than strategic planning. Men operating at their absolute training limits controlled these moments. Years of preparation compressed into seconds of execution. Every drill and practice session led to this instant. All their knowledge focused on this single torpedo attack. The journey to this critical moment had begun months earlier. February 29, 1944 marked USS Kavala's commissioning day. Electric Boat Company in Groton, Connecticut had delivered another submarine to the fleet. Her hull number, SS-382, joined the growing Pacific submarine force. Among the 73 Gato-class submarines destined for Pacific service, Kavala represented fresh potential. Her steel hull gleamed with new paint. Her machinery hummed with factory precision. Every system operated at peak efficiency. No battle damage scarred her surfaces yet. Her crew mixed experienced submarine veterans with green sailors. Some men had survived multiple war patrols already. Others had never heard enemy depth charges exploding. The veterans shared their knowledge quietly. The rookies listened with desperate attention. Commander Herman Joseph Kostler brought proven combat experience to his new command. Naval Academy class of 1934 had produced many fine submarine captains. His previous service aboard USS Garfish had established his reputation. Over 51,000 tons of Japanese shipping lay on the ocean floor thanks to his previous attacks. Now he commanded his own boat for the first time. 311 feet of steel and determination responded to his orders. 24 torpedoes waited in their tubes and storage racks. Every one represented potential enemy destruction. The hopes of turning Pacific War momentum rested on his shoulders. American submarine production statistics would have terrified Japanese naval planners. The industrial numbers revealed America's overwhelming manufacturing advantage. By June 1944, new submarines emerged from shipyards every 17 days. That production rate exceeded Japan's ability to replace losses. Each submarine required 1.5 million man-hours to complete. Skilled workers labored around the clock in multiple shifts. 75,000 individual components came together in precise assembly. 23 different states contributed materials and parts. The industrial symphony played continuously across 6 major shipyards. This manufacturing miracle repeated itself without interruption. Welders, electricians, machinists, and engineers worked with desperate urgency. Everyone understood the stakes in the Pacific. American boys were dying while ships waited for completion. No time could be wasted on non-essential activities. But on May 31, 1944, Kavala remained just another untested submarine. Her departure from Pearl Harbor attracted no special attention. Dozens of submarines had made similar departures before her. Her orders seemed routine for first war patrols: patrol the eastern Philippines waters, relieve USS Flying Fish at San Bernardino Strait, hunt for targets of opportunity along shipping routes. Standard patrol orders for submarine operations. Nothing suggested the historic events waiting ahead. June 15, 1944 changed everything with a single radio message. 3 days out from Midway Island, Kavala's radio operator received urgent transmissions. Commander Submarines Pacific Headquarters had new intelligence. Admiral Charles Lockwood's operations staff had decoded critical Japanese communications. The Japanese mobile fleet had finally emerged from hiding. Missing since the Battle of Santa Cruz in October 1942, this massive force now moved toward the Marianas. Intelligence reports confirmed the worst American fears. Operation Forager faced potential disaster. The American invasion of Saipan had begun that very morning. Thousands of Marines were hitting the beaches under heavy fire. Naval support ships crowded the waters offshore. Transport vessels unloaded supplies and reinforcements. All these ships would become sitting ducks if enemy carriers arrived. If Ozawa's carrier fleet reached the Marianas, they could devastate the invasion force. American landing craft would burn under coordinated air attacks. Support vessels would sink beneath overwhelming aerial assault. The entire invasion might collapse in bloody failure. Kavala received new orders immediately. Take position 350 miles east of San Bernardino Strait. Intercept enemy fleet movements. Report contact information to fleet headquarters. Engage targets when opportunity presented itself. The Philippine Sea covered 1.5 million square miles of empty ocean. Finding a carrier task force in that vast expanse challenged every submarine crew. Locating specific ships resembled searching for individual cars on all Texas highways. Submerged submarines operated nearly blind in this hunt. Periscope observations provided limited visual range. Primitive radar offered marginal detection capability. Sound equipment picked up distant propeller noises. But vast ocean distances swallowed most contacts. Luck played a larger role than skill in these searches. June 17, 1944, brought the first break in their search. 1950 hours marked the moment when fortune finally smiled. Kavala's SD radar operator detected something at 30,000 yards distance. The screen showed a faint electronic signature. The contact appeared and disappeared like a ghost. Electronic noise made identification difficult. Atmospheric conditions affected radar performance. The PIP flickered in and out of detection range, but something definitely moved out there in the darkness. Kostler ordered maximum surface speed immediately. 4 engines ahead, full sent Kavala surging forward. Her diesels roared with mechanical fury. Black smoke poured from her exhaust vents. The submarine's hull cut through ocean swells at 20 knots. Water crashed over her forward deck. Spray flew back across the bridge. The lookouts gripped their safety lines tightly. Wind tore at their clothing and equipment. Salt spray stung their eyes despite protective goggles. At 22,000 yards, more contacts appeared on radar. Multiple ships traveled in formation together. The electronic signatures suggested a major naval force. This was no single merchant vessel wandering alone. Something big moved through these waters. What Kavala had discovered was Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa's first mobile fleet. The main striking force of the Imperial Japanese Navy steamed directly ahead. 9 aircraft carriers led this massive formation. 5 battleships provided heavy gunfire support. 13 cruisers added their firepower to the fleet. 28 destroyers screened the formation against submarine attacks. This represented the largest concentration of Japanese naval power since Midway. Everything Japan had left sailed in this formation. Executive Officer Lieutenant Commander Robert Risser calculated their tactical problem quickly. The Japanese force zigzagged at 19 knots speed. Course 290 degrees took them northwest toward the Marianas. Standard anti-submarine evasion tactics made approach difficult. To achieve attacking position, Kavala would need specific positioning. Race ahead on the surface during darkness. Submerge directly in the enemy formation's path. Hope the ships passed within torpedo firing range. Pray the destroyers didn't detect their presence. Kostler faced an agonizing command decision. Standing orders required immediate contact reports. This intelligence could save thousands of American lives. Fleet commanders needed enemy position information desperately. Lives hung in the balance of this decision. But transmitting would reveal Kavala's exact location. Japanese radio direction finders would pinpoint their position immediately. Enemy destroyers would charge toward them with depth charges ready. Their attack opportunity would disappear forever. Through his periscope, one carrier was recovering aircraft. Her flight deck bustled with activity. Aircraft handlers pushed planes into position. Pilots climbed from cockpits after landing. The ship was vulnerable and distracted during flight operations. At 2200 hours, Kostler chose duty over personal glory. Kavala surfaced into the dark night air. Her radio antenna extended skyward immediately. The transmitter warmed up for message sending. Large enemy task force appeared in his transmission. Latitude 12,0 north, longitude 135,00 east gave precise coordinates. Course 290, speed 19 provided movement information. Many large and small ships described fleet composition accurately. The message reached Admiral Raymond Spruance aboard USS Indianapolis within minutes. 5th Fleet Commander now possessed exact enemy location data. Task Force 58's 15 carriers could position themselves accordingly. The intelligence would prove decisive in coming battle, but transmission carried immediate consequences. Japanese radio direction finders detected the signal instantly. Electronic bearings pinpointed Kavala's transmission source. 2 destroyers peeled away from formation immediately. They charged toward the submarine's position with deadly intent. Kavala crash dived to 300 feet depth. Emergency diving procedures sent men scrambling throughout the boat. Ballast tanks flooded rapidly with seawater. The submarine's bow angled sharply downward. Depth charges began exploding above them almost immediately. The submarine's hull groaned under tremendous water pressure. Each depth charge generated 23,000 pounds pressure per square inch. Explosions created massive underwater shock waves. Close detonations could crush submarines like empty cans. For 3 endless hours, destroyers circled overhead menacingly. They dropped systematic depth charge patterns. Each explosion rattled Kavala's hull violently. Light bulbs shattered throughout the boat. Small leaks appeared in hull glands and fittings. The crew counted 42 separate explosions during this ordeal. Each blast felt like hammer blows against steel. Men held on to whatever they could reach. Loose equipment crashed to deck plates. The boat shuddered with each underwater detonation. Temperature inside rose to 110 degrees Fahrenheit quickly. Men stripped to underwear despite naval regulations. Breathing became shallow to conserve precious oxygen. Carbon dioxide levels climbed dangerously high. Ventilation systems had been shut down for silence. At Ura 100 on June 18th, the destroyers finally departed. Their depth charge supplies had been exhausted. Kavala surfaced into an empty ocean once again. The task force had vanished over the horizon, but Kostler wasn't ready to abandon pursuit yet. He ordered high-speed chase on estimated base course. This gamble assumed carriers would launch aircraft at dawn. Flight operations required turning into wind direction. That predictable maneuver might provide another attack opportunity. June 19, 1944, 800 hours brought renewed hope. After a frustrating night of fruitless searching, fortune smiled again. Aircraft began appearing overhead in large numbers. Dozens flew eastward toward American fleet positions. The Japanese had launched their morning strike against Task Force 58. Carrier decks had emptied their aircraft for this attack. Those planes now flew toward their destruction in American fighter traps. But their departure left carriers vulnerable to submarine attack. Sound operators reported high-speed propeller noises approaching from northwest. Multiple ships moved at high speed through these waters. The distinctive sound signatures suggested major warships. Kavala had found her targets once again. Through his periscope, Kostler saw them clearly. A Japanese carrier task group raced to recover returning aircraft. Target angle 90 degrees starboard provided perfect attack geometry. Range 5,000 yards and closing rapidly. Speed 24 knots meant quick approach. 3 carriers appeared in his periscope view. The nearest one looked massive compared to others. Her distinctive island structure rose high above flight deck. Aircraft crowded her deck awaiting recovery operations. She presented the most valuable target. Lieutenant David McClung checked identification cards quickly. Recognition training identified enemy ship types by silhouette. "That's Shokaku class carrier," he reported confidently. "Pearl Harbor veteran, 29,000 tons displacement." One of Japan's most valuable warships. What followed demonstrated masterful submarine approach tactics. Kostler ordered Kavala to periscope depth carefully. The boat must remain hidden from surface lookouts, but visual contact was essential for attack success. Balance between stealth and observation required precise control. Every 60 seconds he raised periscope for observations. 3-second looks provided target-bearing updates. Range measurements showed closing distance accurately. The approach required mechanical precision timing. One mistake would alert enemy destroyers to their presence. The approach party worked with practiced efficiency. Years of training compressed into minutes of execution. Every man knew his specific responsibilities. Teamwork meant survival in submarine warfare. Individual errors killed entire crews quickly. The torpedo data computer clicked and whirred constantly. This analog computer calculated firing solutions automatically. Target course, speed, and range fed into mechanical calculators. The TDC solved trigonometric equations in real time. Modern technology aided ancient hunting instincts. TDC engineering represented mechanical marvel of precision. Real-time calculations accounted for submarine motion. Target movement was factored continuously. Torpedo speed provided final firing solution. Analog computers performed mathematics faster than human brains. Tension in the conning tower became almost tangible. Every man understood they approached one of Japan's most powerful warships. Destroyer escorts existed solely to kill submarines. One mistake meant certain death for everyone aboard. 52 American submarines had already been lost. 1,100 hours brought the decisive moment forward. Shokaku turned into wind for aircraft recovery operations. Her starboard side presented perfectly to Kavala's position. The carrier now sailed broadside at 200 yards range, point-blank distance for torpedo attacks. Through his periscope, Kostler could see individual details clearly. Japanese pilots climbed from aircraft cockpits on deck. Flight deck crews prepared for landing operations. The enemy seemed completely unaware of approaching death. Submarine stealth had achieved perfect surprise. But as Kavala prepared final firing preparations, disaster nearly struck. A Japanese destroyer suddenly appeared on attack course. Later identified as Urakazi, she had spotted something suspicious. Either periscope exposure or torpedo tube doors opening. Kostler faced split-second decision-making. Dive immediately and lose this perfect shot. Fire torpedoes and risk getting rammed by destroyer. 10 seconds maximum remained for final choice. Combat command required instant decisions under extreme pressure. He made his choice without hesitation. Fire 1 initiated the attack sequence. At 8-second intervals, 6 Mark 14 torpedoes left forward tubes. 3 carried standard magnetic exploders. 3 used contact exploders for reliability. Each torpedo weighed 3,280 pounds fully loaded. 668 pounds of Torpex explosive filled each warhead. These weapons traveled at 46 knots speed. Compressed air propulsion left distinctive wake trails. But at this close range, enemy evasion was nearly impossible. Physics and geometry favored the attacker. 1,122 hours marked torpedo impact time. Through his periscope, Kostler watched death approach Shokaku. The first torpedo passed ahead of her bow. Minor navigation error caused this miss. The second struck forward of island structure perfectly. The third hit amidships with tremendous explosion. The fourth impacted near stern section accurately. The fifth and sixth passed astern harmlessly. 4 out of 6 torpedoes found their target. Excellent shooting under combat conditions. On Shokaku's bridge, Captain Matsubara Hiroshi had just ordered evasive action. The lookout's warning came too late for effective response. Torpedo wakes were already visible in water. Multiple explosions occurred within seconds. His ship was doomed immediately. The first torpedo struck at frame 103 precisely. Aviation fuel tanks ruptured instantly. Immediate fires erupted throughout forward sections. Gasoline vapor ignited in massive fireballs. Secondary explosions followed the primary impact. Damage control teams rushed toward blazing compartments. The second torpedo hit at frame 144 devastatingly. Forward engine room destroyed completely. Hull ruptured across 3 separate compartments. Seawater flooded machinery spaces rapidly. Steam lines burst under tremendous pressure. Scalding vapor filled adjacent areas. The third torpedo impacted at frame 211 catastrophically. After aviation fuel system demolished entirely. Secondary fires started throughout hangar deck. Ammunition storage areas threatened by flames. Explosive ordnance cooked off in intense heat. The ship was dying quickly. On Kavala, celebration was premature and dangerous. Destroyer Urakazi charged their position aggressively, already within 1,000 yards and closing fast. Her depth charges were prepared for immediate attack. Submarine survival required emergency diving procedures. Kostler ordered crash dive to 400 feet immediately. This exceeded submarine test depth of 300 feet. Hull compression increased dangerously at extreme depth, but surface destroyers posed greater immediate threat. Risk depth rather than certain destruction above. As Kavala plunged toward crushing depths, horrible sounds carried through water. Shokaku's death agony transmitted clearly through ocean medium. Bulkheads groaned and collapsed progressively. Ammunition magazines exploded in chain reactions. Steam lines ruptured with screaming hisses. Depth charging began immediately after diving. Urakazi and 2 additional destroyers dropped systematic patterns. Type 95 depth charges contained 220 pounds explosive each. In 3 hours, they dropped 106 separate charges. Each explosion threatened Kavala's survival. Inside the submarine, conditions deteriorated rapidly. Air conditioning secured to reduce noise signatures. Temperature climbed to 120 degrees Fahrenheit quickly. Humidity reached 100% saturation. Men fainted from heat exhaustion regularly. Carbon dioxide levels rose to dangerous concentrations. The crew breathed shallowly to conserve oxygen supplies. Emergency air purification systems worked at maximum capacity, but confined spaces limited their effectiveness. Poisonous gas accumulation threatened everyone aboard. Depth charges exploded continuously around them. At 11:45, close explosion ruptured forward torpedo room seal. Flooding started immediately in forward spaces. 2,000 gallons of seawater entered through damaged fittings. Emergency pumping teams worked desperately. At 12:10, another near miss knocked out sound gear completely. Kavala became blind to destroyer positions. Acoustic detection systems failed under blast pressure. The submarine could no longer track hunting destroyers. They operated completely blind now. At 12:30, ventilation supply trunk flooded seriously. 400 gallons of seawater contaminated air systems. Hand pumping was required for water removal. Bucket brigades formed in 120-degree heat. Men passed water containers hand to hand. Narrow passageways made movement difficult. At 14:10, massive explosions thundered from Shokaku's direction. 2 hours 48 minutes after torpedo impacts. These sounds would haunt survivors forever. They were hearing Shokaku's final death throes. The carrier was breaking apart above them. Aviation fuel vapor had accumulated between decks. Damage control efforts couldn't ventilate spaces adequately. Critical concentration levels built up steadily. A single spark from damaged electrical equipment ignited everything. The explosion was absolutely catastrophic. Shokaku's flight deck buckled upward violently. Her hull split along the keel completely. Forward elevator blew 200 feet into air. It crashed back into sea with tremendous splash. The carrier broke in half and sank within 4 minutes. Above Kavala, cowering at 400 feet depth, great tragedy unfolded. Pacific War's most experienced naval aviators were drowning. Of Shokaku's 1,660 officers and crew, only 570 would survive this disaster. 887 ships company died with their vessel. 376 members of Air Group 601 perished in water. These included Japan's most experienced naval aviators. Their loss represented irreplaceable combat experience. Commander Takahashi Kakuichi led Air Group 601. He had commanded strikes at Pearl Harbor, Ceylon, and Santa Cruz. His death and loss of experienced pilots created permanent damage. Japanese naval aviation would never recover from this catastrophe. Replacement pilots lacked combat experience completely. Training programs couldn't produce adequate replacements quickly. Japan's carrier warfare capability died with these men. Captain Matsubara survived through unwilling rescue efforts, washed overboard when Shokaku capsized completely. Japanese tradition demanded he die with his ship. His crew saved him against his expressed wishes. He would never command another vessel afterward. Shore assignments occupied his remaining war service. Torment over losing ship and men haunted him constantly. Japanese naval culture blamed commanders for vessel losses. Survivors' guilt destroyed many careers permanently. Honor demanded death with one's command. Back aboard Kavala, depth charging finally ended at 14:30. The submarine had endured 106 separate explosions, 3 hours, 6 minutes of continuous bombardment. Her hull showed stress damage throughout. Small leaks required constant attention. Kostler waited another full hour before risking periscope exposure. Kavala rose slowly to periscope depth. The sea appeared empty except for debris. Oil slicks marked Shokaku's gravesite. Smoke columns rose from distant locations. Japanese destroyers were picking up survivors frantically. Rescue operations took priority over submarine hunting. They focused on saving drowning shipmates. Kavala could observe without immediate threat. The hunters had become rescuers now. At 1900, Kavala finally surfaced into gathering dusk. Fresh air had never smelled so sweet. The crew emerged onto deck, gasping desperately. Many collapsed from complete exhaustion. 9 hours submerged had drained everyone's strength. The submarine's hull showed battle scars clearly. Dents from near misses covered steel surfaces. Paint was stripped by blast pressure. Dozens of small leaks required emergency repairs. But Kavala had survived her baptism of fire. Kostler transmitted his victory report to Pearl Harbor, hit Shokaku-class carrier with 3 torpedoes, received 105 depth charges during 3 hours, heard 4 terrific explosions from target direction, believed that baby sank completely. What Kavala's crew didn't realize was their contribution to decisive naval victory. While they attacked Shokaku, USS Albacore torpedoed carrier Taiho, though Taiho took only 1 torpedo hit initially. Poor damage control led to massive vapor explosion. Taiho sank with loss of 1,150 officers and men. Ozawa's flagship had been destroyed by single torpedo. American submarines had eliminated 2 fleet carriers. Japanese naval aviation was collapsing completely. In the air above, Mariana's turkey shoot reached bloody climax. American F-6F Hellcat fighters dominated completely. Radar guidance provided perfect interception courses. Superior tactics destroyed Japanese formations systematically. 315 enemy aircraft shot down while losing only 23. Japanese lost 445 carrier aircraft total. Their irreplaceable pilots died with machines. Japan began war with 3,500 highly trained naval aviators. By June 19, 1944, fewer than 500 remained alive. Aircraft could be manufactured quickly. Training carrier pilots required 700 flight hours minimum. Japan lacked fuel for training programs. Time had run out for pilot replacement. Experienced instructors were all dead. The aircraft could be built quickly. Japan would build 2,045 carrier aircraft during 1944. The pilots could never be replaced adequately. Industrial capacity meant nothing without trained personnel. Carriers became floating airfields without competent air crews. Japan's naval aviation died this day. Kavala's successful attack showcased American submarine warfare revolution. Mark 14 torpedo problems had finally been resolved. 2 years of failures had been debugged completely. Magnetic exploder problems were identified and corrected. Depth settings had been calibrated accurately. Contact exploders had been redesigned completely. Torpedo data computer calculations achieved mechanical perfection. Real-time trigonometric solutions would have required mathematician teams previously. Each submarine carried 2 TDCs for redundancy systems. $60,000 worth of precision engineering filled each boat. That cost equaled 12 average American homes. Analog computing represented technological breakthrough for warfare applications. American industrial capacity produced torpedoes in staggering quantities. Newport Torpedo Station manufactured 300 Mark 14 torpedoes monthly. Each weapon required 2,000 man-hours assembly. 2,500 individual parts were manufactured to 0.01-inch tolerances. Kavala's presence at exactly correct position was no accident. American codebreakers had penetrated Japanese naval communications completely. JN-25 code system had been systematically broken. Japanese confidence in communication security was completely misplaced. Commander Joseph Rochefort's team at Station Hypo worked around the clock. Japanese fleet messages were decoded within hours. Translation followed immediately afterward. Ozawa's planned route was known in advance. His fuel status was monitored continuously. Even ship captain names were known beforehand. This intelligence reached submarine commanders as ultra messages. American submarines positioned along Japanese transit routes with deadly precision. Code breaking provided enormous tactical advantages. Japanese never suspected their communications were compromised completely. Post-war interrogations revealed their assumptions. They attributed submarine success to superior radar. Lucky positioning explained American effectiveness supposedly. The truth remained classified until 1970s. By time Kavala sank Shokaku, American submarines had evolved into Pacific's most effective naval weapon. Statistics revealed their devastating impact clearly. 288 submarines served in Pacific War total. They sank 1,114 Japanese vessels totaling 5.3 million tons. 55% of all Japanese losses came from submarine attacks. Human cost was severe for Americans. 52 submarines were lost with all hands. 356 officers and men died in service. 22% casualty rate exceeded all other service branches, but their strategic impact was absolutely decisive. Japan's island economy depended on maritime imports. Submarine warfare slowly strangled their war effort. Vice Admiral Takagi Sokichi admitted post-war truth. American submarine campaign was single most decisive factor in Japanese defeat. Ships could be replaced with sufficient time. New oil sources could be developed eventually. But submarine attacks prevented both solutions. Japan's defeat was inevitable once submarines cut supply lines. Industrial capacity meant nothing without raw materials. More sailors could be trained easily enough, but protecting our merchant ships from submarine attacks proved impossible. The underwater raiders systematically destroyed Japan's ability to continue fighting. July 1, 1944 arrived with new orders for Kavala. 11 more days of empty ocean searching had yielded nothing. Now, command directed the submarine toward Saipan. The embattled island grew larger on the horizon as Kavala approached. The scene that greeted them defied imagination. Ships covered the water in every direction. Metal vessels stretched beyond the horizon like a floating city. Commander Kostler would later document what he witnessed in his patrol report. The sight overwhelmed description. Every conceivable type of naval vessel appeared to have gathered in these waters. Massive battleships hurled shells toward the smoking island. Their guns thundered continuously. Carrier decks launched aircraft in endless streams. Strike after strike departed toward Japanese positions. Transport ships unloaded supplies onto beaches already packed with equipment. Explosions bloomed across half the island's surface. Smoke columns rose from burning installations. This display represented American industrial might unleashed without restraint. USS Philip appeared alongside Kavala as an escort. The destroyer's crew lined their rails completely. Cheers erupted across the water. Word of Kavala's success had traveled throughout the Pacific Fleet. Every sailor knew this submarine had destroyed Shokaku. They watched the boat that had avenged Pearl Harbor. As Kavala approached USS Holland, her assigned tender, sailors from other submarines gathered to witness her arrival. These men wanted to see the vessel that had killed a Pearl Harbor attacker. August 3, 1944, brought Kavala to Majuro Atoll for complete debriefing. Vice Admiral Charles Lockwood commanded all submarine forces in the Pacific. The admiral personally came aboard Kavala to congratulate her crew. Such visits were rare honors reserved for exceptional achievements. The submarine would receive a Presidential Unit citation for her first patrol. This decoration recognized extraordinary heroism in combat situations. Meanwhile, in Japan, Shokaku's destruction remained hidden from civilian populations. Imperial Navy propaganda listed the carrier as damaged and undergoing repairs. This deception continued until October 1944, when her loss was quietly admitted. The psychological damage within naval circles cut deeper than public morale concerns. Shokaku had appeared unsinkable to many officers. She had survived devastating damage at the Coral Sea battle. Santa Cruz had left her battered but still fighting. Lesser ships would have sunk from such punishment. Commander Fuchida Mitsuo had led the Pearl Harbor attack from Akagi's flight deck. His post-war writings revealed the impact of Shokaku's loss on Japanese naval thinking. Learning of Shokaku's destruction convinced us the war was finished. The ship represented far more than steel and aircraft. She embodied our entire naval tradition. Her symbol gave meaning to our carrier operations. Her destruction alongside Taiho in a single day shattered the carrier force's fighting spirit completely. The technical implications proved equally devastating for Japanese naval operations. Japanese damage control procedures had been considered superior to American methods. The aviation fuel vapor explosion that consumed Shokaku could have been prevented. Proper ventilation systems would have dispersed the dangerous gases safely. American carriers had absorbed similar torpedo damage during previous battles. Superior damage control techniques had saved them from Shokaku's fate. Captain Omai Toshikazu served as Admiral Ozawa's chief of staff during the Philippine Sea battle. His post-war testimony revealed hard truths about Japanese naval capabilities. Early victories had taught us dangerous lessons. We believed fighting spirit and intensive training could overcome material disadvantages. Reality proved different. Radar screens could not be defeated by courage alone. Determination could not stop incoming torpedoes. American industrial capacity had created a war machine beyond our ability to match. Shokaku's sinking demonstrated American technological advantages extending far beyond submarines and their torpedoes. The SJ surface search radar mounted on Kavala could detect enemy ships at 15 miles distance. Darkness and fog posed no obstacles to this electronic vision. Japanese radar installations existed on only a handful of ships. Their maximum detection range reached 8 miles under ideal conditions. Equipment failures occurred frequently. Many systems stopped functioning entirely in combat conditions. American communication systems provided another crushing advantage over Japanese naval forces. Kavala's radio equipment could reach Pearl Harbor from anywhere in the vast Pacific. High-frequency transmissions used sophisticated encryption methods that Japanese codebreakers never penetrated. Japanese submarines faced constant communication problems during extended patrols. They often surfaced dangerously close to enemy island bases. These risky approaches were necessary to relay basic operational messages. Surface exposure invited immediate attack. Life support systems on American submarines represented yet another crucial technological edge. Kavala's air conditioning provided more than crew comfort during tropical operations. The climate control prevented electrical systems from corroding in high humidity conditions. Her water distillation plant produced 1,000 gallons of fresh water every day. This capacity ensured adequate supplies for extended patrol operations. Japanese submarines lacked these essential systems completely. Equipment failures plagued their extended missions. Crew health problems developed during long patrols. The men serving aboard Kavala represented typical American submarine crews throughout the Pacific. Every sailor had volunteered for submarine duty. Their training programs were intensive and comprehensive. The average crew member was 23 years old. Most had never seen ocean water before the war began. Yet these young men operated one of the most complex weapon systems ever constructed. Their skill levels were remarkable considering their backgrounds. Training programs produced extraordinary results through innovative methods. Each crew member cross-trained in multiple technical specialties. Electricians could operate diving planes during emergencies. Torpedo specialists could run diesel engines when needed. This redundancy meant battle casualties rarely disabled an American submarine completely. Critical functions could continue even after significant personnel losses. Morale remained high through amenities impossible on other warships. Kavala carried an ice cream machine for crew refreshment. Washing machines kept uniforms clean during long patrols. Individual bunks provided privacy for most crew members. Space limitations made this luxury remarkable. Food quality exceeded anything available on other naval vessels. Steaks appeared regularly on patrol menus. Fresh vegetables were served when available. Daily bread baking filled compartments with appealing aromas. These seeming luxuries served important military purposes beyond crew satisfaction. High morale maintained crew effectiveness during 60-day patrol periods. Comfortable living conditions prevented psychological breakdown under extreme stress. The destruction of both Shokaku and Taiho triggered cascading failures throughout Japanese naval aviation. Air Group 601 had been split between both carriers before the battle. 80% of their aircraft were destroyed or damaged. Pilot losses reached similar proportions. These were not simply numerical losses that could be easily replaced. These pilots were irreplaceable combat veterans who should have trained the next generation. The Japanese pilot training program was already strained beyond capacity before the Philippine Sea disaster. Complete collapse followed the battle's devastating pilot losses. Before the war began, Japanese naval aviators received 700 hours of flight training. Rigorous instruction produced highly skilled combat pilots. By late 1944, new pilots received less than 100 hours of training. They could not perform basic carrier operations safely. Combat skills were completely beyond their capabilities. American pilot training programs expanded exponentially during the same period. By June 1944, the United States was training 100,000 pilots annually. Each pilot received 600 hours of flight instruction before deployment. The supporting infrastructure represented industrial mobilization on unprecedented scales. 139 air stations provided training facilities across America. 40,000 training aircraft filled the skies daily. 100,000 instructors guided student pilots through comprehensive programs. The Philippine Sea battle effectively ended Japanese carrier aviation as an offensive military force. Kavala's intelligence gathering had enabled the American victory. Her sinking of Shokaku punctuated the complete defeat. The Imperial Navy would never again launch major carrier strikes against American forces. Admiral Toyota Soemu commanded the combined fleet during this period. He immediately recognized the battle's implications for continued Japanese resistance. Losing our air groups means losing the entire war. New carriers can be constructed in our shipyards. Experienced pilots cannot be created through industrial production. American submarines have accomplished more than sinking our ships. They have destroyed our fundamental capability to continue fighting. Japan had lost 476 carrier aircraft during 2 days of battle. 445 trained pilots died or were declared missing. American losses totaled 130 aircraft and 76 pilots. But American production was replacing these losses faster than they occurred. America produced 500 new naval aircraft weekly. 2,000 new naval aviators completed training monthly. Japan managed only 100 aircraft weekly from all factories combined. 200 pilots completed training each month. Most would never survive their first combat encounters. Kavala's success inspired intensified submarine operations throughout the Pacific Theater. By July 1944, 140 American submarines were actively patrolling Japanese waters. Wolfpack tactics coordinated multiple boats against Japanese shipping. The Japanese merchant fleet had totaled 6.4 million tons in December 1941. Systematic submarine attacks had reduced this capacity to 2.8 million tons. Japan required 3 million tons of shipping to maintain minimal civilian economy. Military operations demanded another 3 million tons of transport capacity. With less than 3 million tons available total, both military and civilian sectors faced starvation. Critical imports dropped to catastrophic levels. Rice imports fell from 1.4 million tons in 1941 to 200,000 tons in 1944. oil imports collapsed from 5 million tons to 600,000 tons. By late 1944, Japanese destroyers were making desperate supply runs. These suicide missions carried aviation fuel drums strapped to destroyer decks. The runs connected Singapore with Japanese home islands. Tankers could no longer survive the submarine-infested shipping lanes. Submarine successes like Kavala's drove continuous technological innovation throughout the war. The Mark 18 electric torpedo entered service in late 1944. These weapons left no visible wake for enemy destroyers to track and follow. The Mark 27 homing torpedo could pursue enemy ships using acoustic guidance systems. Sound signatures led the weapons directly to their targets. Radar technology advanced at breathtaking speed throughout the conflict. The SJ radar that helped Kavala locate the Japanese fleet was soon replaced. ST radar provided twice the detection range and much better resolution. By war's end, American submarines carried radar capabilities exceeding most surface ships. Communication security reached unprecedented levels of sophistication. The ECM Mark II cipher machine installed on Kavala encoded messages using 150 million possible combinations. Japanese codebreakers never successfully decrypted a single American submarine operational message during the entire war. Kavala would complete 5 additional war patrols after destroying Shokaku. Her third patrol produced another significant victory on November 25, 1944. The submarine sank the destroyer Shimotsuki in a carefully executed attack. The destroyer's commander led Destroyer Squadron 31 at the time of the attack. His entire staff died with him when the ship went down. On January 5, 1945, Kavala destroyed 2 net tenders during a night surface engagement. Each successive patrol demonstrated growing American dominance in Pacific waters. By 1945, Kavala and her sister boats operated boldly in the Sea of Japan itself. This body of water had been considered a Japanese lake since the war began. American submarines now surfaced in broad daylight within these waters. They challenged any Japanese vessel to come out and engage them. Few Japanese ships accepted these provocations. Kavala's wartime statistics were impressive but not unique among American submarines. 6 war patrols produced 34,180 tons of enemy shipping destroyed. Not a single crew member was lost to enemy action during any patrol. This record, multiplied across nearly 300 submarines, spelled inevitable doom for the Japanese Empire. August 15, 1945 found Kavala on lifeguard duty off the Japanese coast. Emperor Hirohito's surrender broadcast was transmitted to all Japanese forces. Minutes after the surrender announcement, a Japanese aircraft attacked Kavala anyway. 2 bombs missed the submarine by 100 yards. This represented the final attack by Japanese forces against an American submarine. September 2, 1945 brought Kavala into Tokyo Bay for the formal surrender ceremony. From her deck, crew members could observe USS Missouri anchored nearby. General MacArthur was accepting Japan's complete capitulation aboard the battleship. The Allied fleet included 12 American aircraft carriers. None of these carriers had suffered serious damage during the entire Pacific War. Japan had operated 25 fleet and light carriers when war began. 20 had been sunk by war's end. Shokaku was among them. Commander Kostler had been promoted to captain during the war. He stood on Kavala's bridge watching the surrender ceremony. His later writings captured the moment's significance. We began this war equipped with obsolete torpedoes and peacetime training methods. We finished as the most effective naval force in world history. Every submarine veteran can take pride in strangling an entire empire. The numerical record of submarine warfare told the story of decisive strategic impact. Japanese losses to United States submarines totaled 1,314 vessels sunk. 5.3 million tons of shipping were destroyed completely. 8 battleships were sunk or severely damaged by submarine attacks. 11 aircraft carriers were sent to the bottom. 30 cruisers were sunk or damaged beyond repair. 127 destroyers and escorts were destroyed. 60% of the Japanese merchant marine was eliminated by war's end. American submarine losses were severe but sustainable. 52 submarines were lost during Pacific operations. 356 officers and men died in submarine service. The casualty rate reached 22% of all personnel. 7 submarines were lost to operational accidents rather than enemy action. 45 submarines were destroyed by Japanese forces. Kavala's personal record stood among the best. 6 war patrols completed successfully. 4 enemy vessels confirmed sunk. 34,180 tons destroyed. 1 Presidential Unit Citation awarded. 4 battle stars earned for combat service. 0 crew casualties from enemy action throughout the war. Behind these cold statistics lay human tragedy on enormous scales. The 1,272 men who died aboard Shokaku left behind families who would never learn their fate. Japanese naval records were destroyed during bombing raids. Only partial crew lists survived the war. Many families received only terse official notifications. These simply stated that their sons had died for the Emperor in southern seas. American submariners who survived the war carried deep psychological scars. The sounds of ships breaking apart and sinking haunted their memories. Knowledge that hundreds of enemy sailors were drowning above them created lasting guilt. Constant fear of depth charge attacks left permanent trauma. These memories plagued veterans for decades after the war ended. Post-traumatic stress disorder was neither recognized nor treated during the 1940s. Unknown thousands of submariners suffered from these invisible wounds. December 30, 1969 marked the end of Kavala's active naval service. After 25 years of operation, including Cold War conversion to hunter-killer configuration, the submarine was decommissioned. Rather than scrapping the historic vessel, the Navy transferred her to Texas Submarine Veterans. Today, Kavala rests permanently at Seawolf Park in Galveston, Texas. She serves as both memorial and museum for future generations. Visitors can walk through the same compartments where Kossler and his crew made naval history. The torpedo room still contains the spaces where weapons that destroyed Shokaku were loaded and prepared. The conning tower preserves the position where attack approaches were calculated with primitive computers. The control room maintains the configuration used when Kavala dove to escape Japanese retaliation. Preserving the submarine required extraordinary volunteer effort over many years. Submarine veterans donated 10,000 hours restoring Kavala to her 1944 wartime configuration. Original equipment was located in Navy warehouses and museums across the country. The torpedo data computer was discovered in a forgotten storage facility. Volunteers completely rebuilt the mechanical calculator to working condition. Every detail was researched and restored with meticulous care. For decades following the war's end, Kavala veterans gathered for annual reunions. These events allowed former crew members to remember fallen shipmates and share war stories. The bonds forged in combat remained strong throughout their lives. As age claimed more veterans each passing year, the reunions grew smaller but increasingly poignant. At the 1994 reunion marking the 50th anniversary of sinking Shokaku, only 47 of Kavala's original 80-man crew remained alive. Commander Kossler, now 82 and retired as Rear Admiral, delivered the reunion's keynote address. His words captured the complexity of their wartime service. "We were young men assigned an impossible mission: find and sink the enemy fleet using one small submarine. We succeeded through intensive training, personal courage, and considerable luck. But we must always remember that our enemies were also brave men performing their duty. We can honor our victory without celebrating their deaths." In a remarkable gesture promoting post-war reconciliation, the reunion committee invited Japanese survivors to attend. The meeting produced deeply emotional encounters. Former enemies, now elderly men, shared memories of the day that changed both their lives forever. Naval historians universally consider Shokaku's sinking one of World War II's most significant submarine attacks. Eliminating a Pearl Harbor veteran carried obvious symbolic importance. The tactical impact proved even more valuable. Shokaku's experienced air group represented irreplaceable expertise that could have trained new pilots. These veterans might have prolonged Japanese resistance significantly. Dr. Samuel Eliot Morrison served as the Navy's official historian. Kavala's destruction of Shokaku was perfectly timed and expertly executed. Coming during the Philippine Sea Battle, it contributed to virtual annihilation of Japanese carrier aviation. The submarine force, more than any other element, strangled Japan into complete submission. Japanese historians reach identical conclusions about the attack's significance. Professor Tanaka Hirawaki teaches at the Japanese Defense University. His analysis emphasizes the loss's broader implications. Losing both Shokaku and Taiho in one day broke our carrier force's backbone permanently. Not just the physical ships, but experienced crews, maintenance specialists, and institutional knowledge. Kavala's torpedoes destroyed far more than steel and aircraft. They destroyed capabilities we could never rebuild. Shokaku's destruction offers lessons that resonate in modern naval planning. Aircraft carriers, despite their tremendous power, remain vulnerable to submarine attack. The threat of asymmetric warfare, first demonstrated by submarines like Kavala, continues shaping naval doctrine today. Modern carriers deploy multiple escorts specifically tasked with anti-submarine warfare. Helicopters equipped with dipping sonar patrol continuously around carrier groups. Nuclear attack submarines scout ahead searching for potential threats. Yet submarine technology advances as rapidly as anti-submarine warfare capabilities. The deadly game of cat and mouse that began with Kavala and Shokaku continues beneath the world's oceans today. Rear Admiral Herman Kostler died on July 1, 1988 at age 76. He was surrounded by family at his Virginia home when he passed away peacefully. His final public statement was delivered at the 1987 Kavala reunion. These words captured the essence of submarine warfare's moral complexity. We performed what our nation demanded of us. We sank ships and killed enemy personnel because America asked this service. We took no pleasure in causing death, but we felt pride in duty properly performed. Shokaku represented our enemy, but her crew were sailors like ourselves, brave men serving their country with honor. We defeated them not because we were superior human beings, but because we possessed better tools and used them more effectively. Our war's lesson is not that submarines are supremely powerful weapons, though they certainly are. It's not that technology automatically wins wars, though it definitely helps. The real lesson is that free peoples, when threatened, can mobilize resources and determination that authoritarian regimes cannot possibly match. We didn't simply outproduce our enemies in factories and shipyards. We outthought them, out-innovated them, and ultimately outlasted them completely. Kavala sits now in Galveston, teaching new generations what we accomplished and why we fought. When young people walk through her narrow compartments, I hope they understand something important. Ordinary Americans, farmers and factory workers and students came together to operate these incredibly complex machines. They won what seemed like an impossible war. That represents the real victory. Not sinking one enemy ship, but proving that democracy, when properly tested, always prevails over tyranny. Today in the USS Kavala Museum in Galveston, a bronze plaque lists all 52 American submarines lost during World War II. These boats remain on eternal patrol beneath Pacific waters. Their crews, totaling 356 officers and men, made the ultimate sacrifice in the same waters where Kavala achieved victory. Museum visitors can examine the actual battle flag that flew when Kavala sank Shokaku. 6 small Japanese flags mark each confirmed enemy vessel destroyed. But the memorial room, provides more moving testimony to warfare's cost. Photographs of every American submarine lost in the Pacific cover the memorial walls. These images remind visitors that victory always comes at terrible human cost. Freedom requires constant sacrifice from each generation. The story of USS Kavala and her destruction of Shokaku ultimately transcends national boundaries and wartime hatreds. It demonstrates how technological innovation, industrial mobilization, and human courage can combine to achieve seemingly impossible goals. One submarine manned by 80 young Americans destroyed one of the Japanese Navy's most powerful warships. This single action contributed significantly to ending the Pacific War. As the final World War II veterans pass into history, preserved vessels like Kavala become our tangible connections to their sacrifice and achievement. Walking through her cramped passages, touching the instruments they used for war, reading the names of those who served with distinction. These experiences connect modern visitors to a time when ordinary people accomplished truly extraordinary things under extreme pressure. USS Kavala's successful attack on June 19, 1944, stands as permanent testimony to American submarine warfare's decisive contribution to Pacific victory. The submarine that emerged from Electric Boat Company's shipyard as just another fleet boat became a powerful symbol. She represented how advanced technology, intensive training, and personal courage could overcome a determined enemy defending their homeland with fanatical devotion. Shokaku's destruction represented far more than tactical victory or strategic success. It was physical manifestation of American industrial supremacy, technological innovation, and the skill of citizen sailors. These young men mastered complex weapon systems to defeat totalitarian aggression. In the end, that may be the most important lesson from that June day in 1944. USS Kavala's torpedoes found their intended targets and changed the course of world history forever. The ripples from that moment continue shaping our world today.